The effects of climate change are far-reaching. It affects everyone, some more than others, and around the world, indigenous peoples' communities have been greatly impacted. Their livelihoods and way of life are under constant threat from the effects of climate change. Chanchana Chakma is from Bangladesh. She represents the Bangladesh Indigenous Women's Network. She is here to have her voice heard at the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Climate Change.
It's very important for us because we have to negotiation to protect our forest and our land because we are struggling for self-determination and for protect the environment and our land rights. Land is our right. That's why it's very important to attend here the COP26 for climate justice.
Chakman says that Bangladesh is exceptionally vulnerable to climate change. Its low elevation, high population density, and inadequate infrastructure all put the nation in dire risk.
Especially vulnerable to indigenous people there because our government have been taken a reforestation project. That's why indigenous people are impacting for that. And another one is the making a tourism. We are losing our land, and that's why for the tourism, that forest going to be destroyed. That's why indigenous people are losing their spiritual and cultural and everything. They are right.
Indigenous peoples community from around the world like Amazon and Chile are coming to this pavilion at COP26 with their traditional attire to have their voices heard and to share why they should be actively involved in discussions and negotiations. Ronaldo Morales is here representing the Amazonian indigenous peoples from Peru.
We were lucky that we had a different legislation that recognized the rights of indigenous peoples since the 70s and gave them certain recognition in order to develop this care and management. However, they are still peoples that are nonetheless under the recognition of their indigenous identity, which is different from the campesino identity. They have a lot of challenges. One of them is their governance rights in terms of configuring or obtaining the recognitions of their autonomous governance. And this is the most challenging issues that we face today. In order to face all the challenges of deforestation, which is massive right now, mining issues, right, with contamination of the rivers, gas exploitation, all kinds of extractive operations that we have occurring in the Amazon, plus illegal logging, plus narco traffic, plus invasion of some lands.
In Belize, indigenous peoples community has its own challenges. Belizean Monica Cook-Magnuson is at COP26 with cultural survival. She says that indigenous peoples are taking the brunt of climate change effects.
Indigenous communities are on the front lines of climate change. They are directly impacted by climate change. For instance, in Belize, our seasons are changing, which affects our traditional planting seasons, which then therefore would affect those would raise food sovereignty issues, right? Because as you know that indigenous peoples and their livelihoods are directly connected and tied into the lands that they use and occupy. So they're directly impacted and affected by climate change. In fact, I would go as far as to say that they are the most impacted because of the ways, our ways of being and our livelihoods are so interconnected with the nature that we find ourselves in, that we live in.
And living for indigenous peoples in Belize and around the world has gotten more difficult because of the effects of climate change. Reporting from COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland, Hipolito Novelo, Love News.